Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered together this Yom on the 9th or 8th of the 5th month, depending on your reckoning, for our Creator's calendar found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, also known as the Zadok calendar or the Enoch calendar, although it takes more than just looking at either of those to get the whole picture. And then it is also the 24th of the 7th month on the Gregorian calendar, or the 24th of July, 2021. And we are continuing in our reading. We're actually taking a segue from Irenaeus Against Heresies, which is a 5-book series. And we're covering a little bit of what is in the Apostolic Constitutions, which predates that by about 100 years or so, maybe a little longer. Irenaeus wrote his Against Heresies around 180 AD, and this writing was contemporary with the emissaries while they were all still alive and gathered together. So it was given to Clement to publish, and all of this is internally in the text itself when you read it. However, this section has to do with all of the heresies or the errors that were brought in from the time of Moshe all the way through to the time of the emissaries, and then what would happen in the future. And currently we had just finished about how our Mashiach was the fulfillment of the sacrificial system in all of its capacities, including the circumcision. So without further ado, we'll continue. All right, so this is chapter 12 of, I believe this is book 7 on the heresy section of the Apostolic Constitutions. And we're continuing with where we left off. We did not start from the beginning. We only started with the part where it was mentioning Simon Ha-Mag, or Simon the magician, and the more modern errors that were brought in after our Mashiach had come. So it says, yet, speaking of the circumcision, yet because this heresy did then seem the more powerful to seduce men, the whole assembly was in danger. And the whole assembly was in danger. We, the 12, assembled together at Yerushalayim, for Mattaniyahu, or Matthew, also known as Louis or Levi, was chosen to be a sent one in the room of the betrayer, and took the lot of Yahuda, as it is said, his office let another take. And that's in the Psalms. We deliberated together with Yaakov, the master's brother, what was to be done, and it seemed good to him and to the elders to speak to the people words of doctrine. For certain men likewise went down from Yahuda to Antioch, and taught the brethren who were there. Here we go. For certain men likewise went down from Yahuda to Antioch, and taught the brethren who were there, saying, unless you are circumcised after the manner of Moshe, and walk according to the other customs which he ordained, you cannot be delivered. That's Acts 15, chapter 15, verse 1. When therefore there had been no small dissension and disputation, the brethren which were at Antioch, when they knew that we were all met together about this question, sent out unto us men who were trustworthy and comprehending in the scriptures, to learn concerning this question. And they, when they had come to Yerushalayim, declared to us what questions were arisen in the assembly of Antioch. Namely, that some said men ought to be circumcised and to observe the other purifications. And when some said one thing and some another, I, Kepha, stood up and said to them, men and brethren, you know how that from ancient Yamim, or days, Elohim made choice among you that the nations should hear the word of the Tov news or Besora by my mouth, and believe. And Elohim, which knows the hearts, bear them witness. And that's alluding to Acts 15, 7 through 8, where he was called to go witness to Cornelius and his family. For a messenger of Yahuwah appeared on a certain time to Cornelius, who was a centurion of the Roman government, and spoke to him concerning me, that he should send for me and hear the word of life, or Chaim, from my mouth. He therefore sent for me from Joppa, to Caesarea Stratanos, and when I was ready to go to him, I would have eaten. And while they made ready, I was in the upper room praying, and I saw Shamayim opened, and a vessel knit at the four corners like a splendid sheet, let down to the eretz, or earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts and creeping things of the earth, or eretz, and the fowls of the Shamayim. And there came a voice out of the Shamayim to me, saying, Arise, Kepha, kill and eat. And I said, By no means, master, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean. And there came a voice a second time, saying, What Elohim has cleansed, call not common. And this was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into Shamayim. Yet as I doubted what this vision should mean, the Ruach said to me, Behold, men seek you, but rise up and go your way with them, nothing doubting, for I have sent them. These men were those which came from the centurion, and so by reasoning, contemplating these things, I comprehended the word of Yahuwah which is written, Whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. That's from Yahuel 2:32. It's commonly translated as Yoel, and I don't remember the exact place I found this quote, but I've read it in a few places that there's witnesses outside of the scriptures and in the history, if you know what happened with the Babylonian captivity, where they removed his name for whatever reasons. In the cuneiform text of the Ugarthic script, or Ugaritic, my apologies, the Ugaritic text that we have available is written in cuneiform, but their language is almost identical to Hebrew otherwise. There's only one letter that's different. It has 23 instead of 22, and it otherwise functions as Hebrew. In all of the texts that they had available, anytime they had written the name of some of the people from the land of Palestine, or the land of Israel there, whether it was the United 12 Nations, or 12 Tribe Kingdom, or reign, or if it was just the two after they were split, or it was just one of them after the others had been exiled. In all the records they have, whenever they're writing, they have Yahu, including with this word specifically, Yoel. It's always Yahu in these instances. So Yochanan would be Yahuchanan, Yoel is Yahuel, Joab, the nephew of Dawid, who is his general over his armies, is Yahuab, and things of that nature. All right, to continue, it says, And again, all the ends of the Eretz shall remember and shall turn unto Yahuwah, and all the families of the nations shall worship before him. For the reign is Yahuwah's, and he is governor of the nations. Psalm 22. And observing that there were expressions everywhere concerning the calling of the nations, I rose up and went with them, and entered into the man's house. And while I was preaching the word, the set-apart Ruach fell upon him, and upon those that were with him, as it did upon us at the beginning. And he put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by emunah, or belief, trustworthiness. I perceived that Elohim is no respecter of persons, But in every nation, he that fears him and works righteousness will be accepted with him. But even the believers which were of the circumcision were astonished at this. Now therefore, why do you tempt Elohim to lay an heavy yoke upon the neck of the taught ones, which neither we nor our fathers are able to bear? Yet by the favor of Yahuwah we believe we shall be delivered, even as they. For Yahuwah has loosed us from our bonds, and has made our burden light, and has loosed the heavy yoke from us by his clemency. While I spoke these things, the whole multitude kept silence. But Jacob, the master's brother, answered and said, Men and brethren, hearken unto me. Shimon has declared how Elohim at first visited to take out a people from the nations for his name. And to this agree the words of the foretellers, as it is written, Afterwards I will return, and will raise again and rebuild the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will rebuild its ruins, and will again set it up, that the residue of men may seek Yahuwah, or after Yahuwah, and all the nations upon whom my name is called, says Yahuwah, who does these things. Amos 9:11 and 12. Known unto El are all his works from the beginning of the world. Wherefore my sentence is, that we do not trouble those who from among the nations turn unto Elohim, but to charge them that they abstain from the pollutions of the nations, and from what is sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from the things strangled, and from fornication, which laws were given to the ancients who lived before the Torah, under the law of nature, Enosh, Hanok, Noach, Melchizedek, Eob, and if there be any other of the same sort. And these are specifically the laws that were enjoined, if you're familiar with the book of Yobelim, after the flood, when Noach gathered his children together, he enjoined for them what to do. And he gave them the list of the things, and that is what is alluded to or directly mentioned by Dawid in the book of Gad the seer, when Hiram, who is cousins, they're related to the Hebrews that came out, they left beforehand. Phoenicia was founded before the children had their own spot in the land, but they were cousins. They were from Yahuda, and it was actually Mahol, who was known by the Egyptians as Phoenicia Pharsa, and Heman, one of his sons, is one who inherited Phoenicia from him. Hiram would be a descendant of them. That's why they spoke the same language. It was known as Hebrew, or they call it Phoenician, and it was a little off, but if you remember, idolatry first started, the language started to change. And the same was true after it was given back to Abraham. When his children went perverted, the language started to have some issues. And you can see it as early as the Phoenicians, who had a different character. I think there was one extra letter. And then there's some slight differences as you go on. You can see more of it. That's why they eventually call it Iberian Punic instead of just Phoenician when they head out further west. But as they start with idolatry and error, as they introduce error to the truth, it's reflected in the very language that's spoken, because the language of creation was what all men had. And that's something that you can also see in the book of Revelations, or not Revelations, I'm sorry, in the book of Yobelim or Jubilees, as well as the others. And then it mentions in, I believe it's Zechariah or Zephaniah, and also in the book of Gad the seer, about how he's going to return to us a pure lip in language, which is the language of creation. All right. So anyways, these were the laws that they're supposed to turn to. It was the law given from Noach before the Torah was given to Moshe. It says, and this is the same thing that Abraham kept, and then it was revealed to him about the other feast days as well. So he was keeping all of the feasts before they went into the land. It says, then it seemed Tob, or good to us, the sent ones, and to Jacob the overseer, and to the elders with the whole assembly, or kahal, to send men chosen from among our own selves, with Barnabas and Shaul of Tarsus, the emissary of the nations, and Yahuda, who was called Barsabbas, and Silas, the chief men among the brethren, and wrote by their hand as follows: the emissaries and elders and brethren, to the brethren of Antioch, Syria, and Cilicia of the nations, or what they call Silo-Syria. Cecilia of the nations, send greeting. Since we have heard that some from us have troubled you with words, subverting your inner beings, to whom we gave no such commandment, it has seemed tob, or pleasing to us, when we were met together with one accord, to send chosen men to you, with our beloved Barnabas and Shaul, men that have hazarded their inner beings or existence for our Yahuwah Yahushua Mashiach, by whom you sent unto us. We have sent also with them Yahuda and Silas, who shall themselves declare the same things by mouth. For it seemed tob, or good, to the set apart Ruach, and to us, to lay no other burden upon you than these necessary things, that you abstain from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from things strangled, and from fornication, from which things if you keep yourselves, you shall do well. Farewell. And if you notice, all of these have to do with sins against the body, which cause corruption. It was one of the things I was mentioning. Some things require chastisement and for you to have affliction. When you sin against the dwelling place of your maker, that's one of those things. We accordingly sent this epistle, but we ourselves remained in Yerushalayim many yamim, or days, consulting together for the public benefit, for the well ordering of all things. But after a long time we visited the brethren, and confirmed them with the word of piety, and charged them to avoid those who, under the name of Mashiach and Moshe, war against Mashiach and Moshe, and in the clothing of sheep hide the wolf. For these are false messiahs, and false prophets, and false apostles, deceivers and corrupters, portions of foxes, the destroyers of the herbs of the vineyard. Quoting from Psalm of Solomon 2:15, or Song of Songs, my apologies, 2:15. For whose sake the love of many will wax cold, but he that endures steadfast to the end, the same shall be delivered. And that is an allusion to Matthew 24, verse 12 through 13. And then I had added also a second witness to this can be seen in the ancient history of Caledonia, when Kadoshi MacIsaac was on his deathbed, he was foretelling to his children, concerning whom, that he might secure us, Yahuwah declared, saying, there will come to you men in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are raving wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Take care of them, for false Mashiachim, or false messiahs, and false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. On whose account also we who are now assembled in one place, Kepha and Andari, Jacob and Yahuchanan, sons of Zebedee, Philip and Bartholomew, Toma and Mattaniyahu, Jacob the son of Alphaeus, and Lebaeus, who is surnamed Thaddeus, Shimon the Zealot, and Mattanyahu, who instead of Yahuda was numbered with us, and Yaakov, the brother of the master and overseer of Yerushalayim, and Shaul, the teacher of the nations, the chosen vessel, having all met together, have written to you this Yachad doctrine for the confirmation of you, to whom the oversight of the Yachad Kahal is committed, or the united into one congregation or assembly. This Yachad is the word where it's translated in the text here most of the time as Catholic, which means universal. But this word is used throughout Scripture as to be united or joined into one. Some mentions of it is as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend, and that sharpening is Yachad. Also in Psalm 133, it says, see how tov and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. That together in unity is Gam Yachad. So all over the place, you have this Yachad talking about being united into one. And then when you look at anywhere in the renewed covenant writings, where it's talking about the only begotten of our Mashiach, and you go into the old covenant writings or the first covenant writings, and you look where it talks about the only begotten of the patriarchs, like Yitzhak being the only begotten of Abraham, or Yaakov being the only begotten of Yitzhak. When you see these writings, or Yisrael collectively as the people, or as himself being the only begotten of Yahuwah, his firstborn son, that word is Yachid, where it's the same word, but you have a yod after the chet before the dalet. And they translate that as only begotten, when it's really united into one by his hand, brought forth. It's the same word with a yod in there, which is the working hand of our maker. So when you take all those into consideration, it has to do with the same thing. But he, our Mashiach, is called the Yachid of the Abba, or Father. And he is called, or he is talked about in other places as the Kadosh One of Israel. It's translated in the common English most often, or the set apart one of Israel. When you look at the Hebrew there, the word for one is not there. It's intrinsic in the word kadosh, as in separated, singular, unique. But the idea of one, it's the concept. It's not the actual word. When you take it literally, it calls him Yahuwah, Kadosh Yisrael. He is the set apart Yisrael. And if you recall what he said, he is our head and we are his body. He is without sin, but we are not. So he is the one that we are to look to as the example, the perfect example of a man walking in righteousness, literally Kadosh Yisrael. And that's what we are supposed to be emulating as his body as well. So it all ties into that concept. With him being the head, we're all working together to be one under him. All right, let's finish this section real quick. Wherein we declare unto you that there is one, or only one, El Shaddai, apart from or besides whom there is no other, and that you must worship and adore him alone through Yahushua Mashiach, our Yahuwah, in the most set apart Ruach, and that you are to make use of the set apart scriptures, the Torah and the foretellers, to honor your parents, to avoid all unlawful actions, to believe the resurrection and the arbitration or judgment, and to expect the retribution, and to use all his creatures with thankfulness as the works of Elohim, and having no evil in them, to marry after a lawful manner, for such marriage is unblameable. And if you remember, this using all creatures with thankfulness is just going back to the beginning. All things were made very good, or very tov, but not all things are considered food. So food, again, as we'd already read, is set apart by the word of Elohim and prayer. And the word of Elohim in Leviticus 11 and in Deuteronomy, I believe it's 14, covers the dietary instructions, what is considered food for someone who believes in what is not. If you need confirmation for this, that it's still applicable, all you have to do is consider that we are his dwelling place, and there is no unclean offering acceptable in his dwelling place. Never has been and never will be. All right. So it says, for the woman is suited to the man by Yahuwah, Proverbs 19:14. And Yahuwah says, he that made them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Matthew 19:4-5. Nor let it be esteemed lawful after marriage to put her away who is without blame. For, says he, you shall take care to your ruach, and shall not forsake the wife of your youth, for she is your partner in existence or life, and the remains of your ruach. I and no other have made her. Malachi 2:15. This is exactly what's in the Shepherd of Hermas also, if you recall. We're not to put away our wife except for the matter of her committing, or a wife to put away her husband, either or, except on the matter of idolatry and adultery, which is synonymous in his sight. If either one is being done by your significant other, you're to separate. You're to put them away, but not to divorce, because you leave them room for repentance. For Yahuwah says, what Elohim has joined together, let no man put asunder. Mark 10:9. For the wife is the partner of existence, united by Elohim, or El, unto one body from two. But he that divides that again into two, which has become one, is the enemy of the creation of Elohim, and the adversary of his providence. In like manner, he that retains her that is corrupted is a transgressor of the Torah of nature, since he that retains an adulteress is foolish and impious. For, says he, cut her off from your flesh, for she is not an help, but a snare, bending her mind from you to another. Proverbs 18:22. Nor be circumcised in your flesh, but let the circumcision which is of the heart by the ruach suffice for the trustworthy. For he says, be circumcised to your Elohim, and be circumcised in the foreskin of your heart. And that quote is from Deuteronomy. All right, so chapter 15, it says, be likewise contented with one immersion alone, that which is into the death of the master, not that which is conferred by wicked heretics, but that which is conferred by unblameable Kohanim, or overseers, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Kodesh Ruach. Matthew 28:19. And a lot of individuals will say that these kind of things support what they call the Trinity, when in reality, the very things that they think of that supports it, because we've been taught poorly, is actually contradicting it. If this was talking about three that were in one, it would not be implying that there's individuals here, but that it's the name of our Abba and of the Ben, meaning also of, and of, meaning also of. The Ruach shows that they're not one, but separate, which is something that we see in the common scriptures, and what's really made very evident if you take the time to look at the Antichrist or Anti-Mashiach for Dummies videos, because it exposes what we've been lied to about the proper interpretation for that book. And what it shows is the very things the Nicolaitans brought in that are still functioning as we speak amongst believers. And it's all about the Trinity instead of one Elohim and then the one he sent, and then the Ruach that he gave, which is distinct from one another, but in collusion, all in agreement. All right. It says, and let not that which comes from the unrighteous be received by you, nor let that which is done by the righteous be disannulled by a second. For as there is one El, one Mashiach, and one Comforter, and one death in the master, or of the master in the body, so let that immersion which is unto him be but one. But those that receive polluted immersion or baptism from the unrighteous will become partners in their opinions, for they are not Kohanim. For Elohim says to them, because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from the office of a Kohen to me. Husha or Hosea 4:6. Nor indeed are those that are baptized by them initiated, but are polluted, not receiving the remission of sins, but the bond of impiety. And besides, they that attempt to baptize those already initiated impel the master afresh, slay him a second time, laugh at El, and ridicule the set apart things, affront the Ruach, dishonor the set apart blood of Mashiach is common blood, are impious against him that sent, him that suffered, and him that witnessed. And it's the Ruach that witnesses, right? Nay, he that out of contempt will not be immersed shall be condemned as an unbeliever, and shall be reproached as ungrateful and foolish. For Yahuwah says, unless a man be immersed of water and of the Ruach, he shall by no means enter into the Malkuth Shamayim, or the reign of the heavens, as they call it. That's Yahukanan 3:5. And again, he that believes and is immersed shall be delivered, but he that believes not shall be condemned. Mark 16:16. Yet he says that when I am dying, I will be immersed, lest I should sin and defile my immersion, is ignorant of Elohim, and forgetful of his own nature. For do not delay to turn unto Yahuwah, for you know not when the next Yom or day will bring forth. And then this part I have a little asterisk. It says, do you also instruct your infants and bring them up, and that should be children, and bring them up in the nurture and admonition of Elohim. For, says he, suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not. All right, and it says, it said to baptize which cannot be done, as we must with our reason and intention believe and be immersed. Children are not held accountable. That's what I put. And if you look, there's no example of immersing children. It's a reasonable man. And those in the wilderness that were numbered, that were named and circumcised, all the men of battle were cut off. And it was the children of under 20 years of age that were brought in, and it was not held against them. That same picture, which alludes to the time when the circumcision will not be as well. Because if you recall, the entire time they're in the wilderness, the children were not circumcised, and the men of battle who were cut off. That was the picture. But Yahushua, Yahushua the son of Nun, when he brought the children into the land, that's when they were circumcised by him. And that's an illusion of it's the actual ceremony itself. If you recall, a child is born, and on the 8th Yom, he's circumcised. When you have a Yom is 1,000 years, you have the creation week and the millennial reign. And then after that time, when Satan is released for a time to lead all the world astray that will follow him, one last time for those that are not made like the messengers yet, they'll have an opportunity to either be true to him or to turn apostate. And after that, when there's the the consummation by fire, the great arbitration, or the great white throne judgment, as they call it, which will take a week of years. Then you have the new Shamayim and the new Eretz, in which righteousness dwell. There's no more tears, no suffering, no sorrow, and no sin, where in truth will be like the messengers and circumcised unto our Creator. And that's the 8th day that's alluded to in certain places there. All right. Pearl said, I read something about Yahushua being cared for by his, oh, sorry, that was already there. So go ahead and continue. We'll finish this section and then we'll wrap it up. This is concerning books with false inscriptions. Here it's alluded to, and then in a few places in the Apostolic Constitutions, you get directly how you should read and what you should read. You also see the list in, or not what we should read, but how, and how we are to determine what is the truth and to hold to it, is explained by Kefa in the Recognitions of Clement. This is, we have sent all these things to you, that you may know our opinion, what it is, and that you may not receive those books which obtain in our name, but are written by the unrighteous. And that would be like the Gnostic good news accounts and other writings that the Gnostics wrote that they attributed to the emissaries, but in reality was not. And you can tell because of the substance of it. It says, for you are not to attend to the names of the sent ones, but to the nature of the things and their settled opinions. For we know that Simon and Cleobius, which we read about earlier, Simon the magician teamed up with this one to overthrow Dositheus in his cult and then take it over. This is, we know that Shimon and Cleobius and their followers have compiled poisonous books under the name of Mashiach and of his taught ones, and do carry them about in order to deceive you who love Mashiach, and us his servants. And among the ancients also some have written apocryphal books of Moshe, and Hanok, and Adam, and Yeshayahu, and Dawid, and Eliyahu, and of the 3 patriarchs, pernicious and repugnant to the truth. The same things even now have the wicked heretics done, reproaching the creation, marriage, providence, the begetting of children, the Torah, and the foretellers, inscribing certain barbarous names, and as they think of messengers, but to speak the truth of demons, which suggest these things to them, whose doctrine ensue or cast away from you, the shoe, right? That you may not be partakers of the punishment due to those that write such things for the seduction and perdition of the trustworthy and unblameable taught ones of Yahushua. Right. So this will about wrap it up for us this Shabbat, and we appreciate everyone's time and attention. If you happen to have any comments or questions, things that go along and support what we've read, please feel free to share, or things that are contrary to it, please feel free to share. We don't claim to have everything perfectly right in our own mind, but we are seeking to do his will and establish truth as he prefers, with 2 or more witnesses confirming every matter. So thank you all for your time, and you have a wonderful Shabbat and the rest of your upcoming week. Shabbat Tov and Shabbat Shalom.